What if I told you there is something you could do that is free, takes about 15 seconds, and can help you deal with challenging situations and toxic people? And bonus, it's got the potential to create everyday magic. Okay, so I'm not a fan of overhyping things, but seriously, this could change your life, and it's so simple. The main thing it requires is being open-minded. I'm going to show you how this works by telling you a story. A few years ago, I was developing a TV project with a couple of people I had never worked with before. They were well established in Hollywood, and I wanted to make a good impression. I was in charge of the creative vision for the project, and they funded the development of the project. One of the things I had to do was hire an editor. Let's call him Mark. Mark's job was to take the footage we had shot and cut together a short video we were going to use to help us pitch the show to networks. Problems started when I got the first cut back from the editor, and it was really bad. Like, so bad that I realized, oh my God, we're going to have to start over. Nothing was usable. None of it captured the vision I had for the show. Now, in these situations, I'm always sensitive when critiquing an artist's work because it's hard being an artist and putting yourself out there. So with that in mind, I sent him feedback with a ton of notes and told him that unfortunately we have to do another first pass. But instead of taking my notes and trying again, he became really aggressive and insisted that I didn't know what I was talking about and that what he had done was how the show should look. Basically, he refused to follow any of my instructions. At this point, I realized this isn't going to work. And so I had to fire him. I offered to pay him half the money he was supposed to get for the whole job so that we could just go our separate ways. And that is when all hell broke loose, to the point that I started to feel a little unsafe at how unhinged he was. He insisted he be paid in full, even though nothing he had done was going to be usable. He tracked down the contact information for the people I was working with who were financing the project and sent them a crazy email behind my back. He accused me of being a ghetto director and trying to steal his work without paying him. He threatened to sue us and said he was going to reach out to his contacts at several networks and warn them to be wary of this project due to unscrupulous behavior on my part. It was crazy. It got so bad that I had to block his email and phone number and have my producer finish dealing with him to pay him his full fee so we could just be done with the situation. But now I'm screwed because I've lost thousands of dollars from my budget to this guy, and I'm still at square one as far as getting this project edited. And don't forget, I'm trying to make a good impression on these people I've never worked with before, which means I'm trying to come in at or under budget. Needless to say, I was stressed. And this is when a magic shift started to happen. At the time, I was really into a book by Tosha Silver called Outrageous Openness, Letting the Divine Take the Lead. The book teaches you how to surrender and trust in higher guidance for the choices you make in your life. I like to call it conspiring with the universe. Whenever I was in a stressful situation, like the one with this editor, I would randomly choose a chapter from her book to listen to, and it would help me just calm down and remember to trust. Well, it turns out the chapter I chose while the whole editor debacle was going down involved a situation the author went through that was very similar to what I was going through. And how she dealt with her situation was to use a prayer. And when I say prayer, I'm using it in the spiritual sense of that word. It's not tied to any specific religion or doctrine. So I thought, you know what? I have got nothing to lose. I'm going to switch up her prayer a bit to serve my situation and just try it. So this is how I did it. Anytime I felt anger, fear, or any challenging thoughts coming up around the situation, I said the prayer. In the beginning, I was literally saying that prayer like every 2 minutes. And in a day, I probably said it like 100 times. But it never once failed to calm me down and reopen my heart. Even after we paid the editor, I continued to say that prayer anytime I remembered the situation and started to get scared about the project or angry about how bad he was. So this is the prayer I said over and over again. I like to call it the karma prayer. Let me release my karma with Mark by forgiving him and myself. Free me from anger and resentment. You alone are my complete source for abundance. This project is fully wrapped in divine order. Even when I say it now, even though that's long done, it just brings me calm and comfort. That prayer literally takes less than 15 seconds to say. You can say it out loud or in your head, depending on the situation, but the most important thing is consistency. Every time the situation you're in enters your mind, you have to say the prayer. And you continue to say the prayer until you feel yourself detach emotionally from the situation or person. You'll know it's working if you no longer feel invested in how the situation turns out. If you no longer feel like it needs to be this way. It's basically a letting go in that you fully trust whatever is supposed to happen will happen. Okay, so here's what happened in my situation. I said that prayer every day repeatedly. Let me release my karma with Mark by forgiving him and myself. Free me from any anger and resentment. You alone are my complete source for abundance. This project is fully wrapped in divine order. Then one day, my producer says to me, "Isn't it funny that email we got from Mark?" Now, remember, I have blocked all his contact info, so I'm not getting anything from him. But it turns out he sent an email to both of us saying that he had thought about it and decided that he would be fine getting paid half of what he was owed, and that when the second check arrived, he would just rip it up. OMG. I was like, it worked! The prayer worked! I can't believe it! It worked. Before you write this off and think, okay, that is just a crazy coincidence, I want you to know that when I read the situation Tosha went through in her book that was similar to mine, I thought the same thing. I thought, there is no way that works on a regular basis. That is just a one-time, unique situation. But here's what I have to say to that now. First, I acknowledge it's really hard to trust in things that can't be fully explained. But what I've come to realize is, as long as it's not harming anyone else, what do you have to lose? Nothing. Worst case, you say a 15-second prayer a bunch of times and nothing happens. But something could happen. Something magical could happen. So why not at least try? Okay, so for those of you who are really skeptical, I'm going to tell you about the situation Tosha experienced and wrote about in her book. By the way, I highly recommend getting this book if you haven't read it. I will put a link in the description. Okay, so Tosha's story was she got caught up in an investment scam and lost $5,000 when the guy she gave the money to disappeared. She says in the book that even though she was really upset, more than anything, she just wanted her peace of mind back. And so she prayed. This is what her prayer was. Let me release my karma with Tony by forgiving him and myself. Free me from anger and resentment. You alone are my complete source for abundance. My finances are fully wrapped in divine order. 6 months later, just as she's starting to forget about it and let it go, someone calls her claiming to be Tony's associate and wants to meet her. She's a little skeptical, but she decides to go and takes a friend with her. When she meets with the guy, he hands her a manila envelope with her $5,000 in it. And then he says, "Yeah, Tony's always scamming people, but for some reason he didn't feel comfortable taking your money and he wanted you to have it back. He was kind of spooked having your money." Can we say magic? In the book, Tosha goes on to say, if you make God your source for all financial, emotional, and spiritual abundance, you open yourself up to unexpected, unlimited good. She said, "I am certain if I had stayed angry, Tony could never have returned the cash. My resentment would have blocked the flow. Praying to forgive him is what opened the door." It may not always be conscious, but I do believe we can feel what other people think about us. Now, of course, this is all happening on the energetic level, but those feelings impact our actions. So enter the prayer. What the prayer does is it neutralizes the negative energy and it creates space for the people involved to either consciously or subconsciously let go and open up. Okay, so here are a few examples of how to use this prayer. I'm giving you these examples so you can see just how flexible this prayer can be with different types of problems. Someone I knew had issues with a tenant who wasn't paying their rent and was just being an overall difficult tenant. So I suggested that they use the prayer. I was like, anytime that tenant enters your mind, use the prayer. Anytime you have to interact with that tenant in person, use the prayer. The goal was to use the prayer to help them return to a place of calm because they were really pissed about this situation. I was like, just really trust that divine order is in cahoots with you to solve this problem. So this is the prayer I gave them. Let me release my karma with the tenant by forgiving them and myself. Free me from anger and resentment. You alone are my complete source for abundance. My rental property is fully wrapped in divine order. Now, they didn't use the prayer. They thought it was a little too out there, but I suggested they use the prayer 2 years ago, and they are still dealing with that problem. Now, would the prayer have sped up a solution to this problem? Who knows? But again, I say, what do you have to lose? Another great way to use this prayer is with all kinds of relationships, especially relationships that you can't cut the person off. Family members, people you work with, neighbors. For those situations, the general prayer I would use is, let me release my karma with this person by forgiving them and myself. Free me from anger and resentment. You alone are my complete source for love and support. My relationships are fully wrapped in divine order. Now, I'm actually using this prayer in a new way for me. I have a friendship that has ended. And what I realized is, even though it ended and everything's fairly cool, when I think of them, I can feel some anger and resentment coming up about what went down. And so I was like, you know what? The friendship is done. There's no attempts to reconcile, but I would like to release that last piece of negative energy attached to our interaction to be gone. And so now she doesn't come into my mind that often because, like I said, it's been a while, but when she does, I immediately use the prayer. And what I'm hoping is that over time, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, the final cord that seems to be tied between us will just naturally dissolve so that we can both be totally free. Okay, so here's an energetic example of where I think this prayer could be great. Now, I'm actually just throwing this out there. I've never actually tried this, although I did recommend this to someone recently. I think using this prayer when you're dating can help you stay grounded and open without getting clingy as you get to know someone you really like. Because dating, especially in the beginning, can be awkward and stressful. So I think using this prayer and turning over a developing relationship to the divine can actually make dating a more pleasurable experience. If I start dating someone, I will definitely be experimenting with this prayer. If you really want to get into using prayer as a way to help you with life problems and hopefully incorporate a little everyday magic into the solutions, I recommend checking out Tosha Silver's other book called Change Me Prayers. This book just offers a variety of prayers for all kinds of different situations. But I will say that if you haven't read Outrageous Openness, I'd read that first because it serves as a great foundation for this approach to doing life. My invitation to you is, if you have a situation you're struggling with right now, I invite you to share it in the comments and practice coming up with a prayer for it. I actually have an idea. We can take this prayer idea to the next level so that if you share a problem and a prayer in the comments, everybody else who reads the comments can say your prayer for you. And that way we can tap into the power of the collective energy and the power of prayer. Let's try it. And at the very least, Please let me know if you try the prayer. As with all prayer, using this for problems you face requires trust. It requires staying open and letting go of societal conditioning that tells you to reject things that can't be fully explained. This approach really requires you to trust in the unknown. But you know what? I have found life to be way more fun when you allow the unexplained to play a part in your life. It's everyday magic, y'all. Love you.